Okay folks, welcome back. And I've already pre-installed all the bump plates, but basically it's straightforward. This is a rubber bump stop and you have a screw. Now these are you can't just put these all the same. There's an orientation to all these depending which way the bump stop's going to face, so just keep that in mind. And what I've been doing is using this Permatex anti-seize. Anywhere where there's going to be steel bolts going into the aluminum extrusion, I've been placing that, install this plate in here. And these are 6mm size. This bolt here is a 5mm on the bump. These are sensor flags, and it's made up of 3 parts, and they go in this pre-threaded. This is already threaded into this plate, and all 4 plates are threaded with this portion here, but the kit comes with just 3 of these sensor flags. And what it is basically you've got the screw, which is 6mm, and then you got a jam nut, and then you got this cap. Okay, so the jam nut goes onto the screw, and this is a fine thread screw, and you thread it. Okay, might have a little bit of paint in there. Okay, so how this works is you just go ahead and put this on here, and you come back and tighten that. And what the directions say from the face of this bump plate to the outside of this sensor cap, it needs to be 9/16 of an inch. So I went ahead and basically got my square, and we'll go ahead and lock that in place. And that jam nut is a 13mm. So, and that's that. And there's only 3 of these, so it's going to take one. This is my front of my machine. It's going to take one here, one directly across, and then right to the back of the machine from this one. Next part that we come to are the riser plates, and we'll come back and get to that here in a little bit. Okay guys, we're back here, and we're gonna assemble the riser plate. And as you can see, this is the front of my machine. Back, there's an orientation to this riser plate now, and there's also an indentation in here to where it sits in that linear rail. Okay, these are 12mm screws, and it's going to be a 4mm hex to put them in. Okay, and I will put Loctite on these. just go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side, and we'll have both riser plates installed on the linear rails, and then we'll continue on to the next one. This portion of the installation are the riser columns, and we're going to be putting these together on the workbench before we take it over to the machine and install them. And this consists of this column of extrusion and this aluminum plate, machine plate. That's going to be the gantry interface plate, and then these are 35mm flathead screws. And I will not be putting Loctite on this. I'm just going to be putting some Never Sees, because the actual gantry will be sitting on this. So, and then you'll have other attachments that'll come into play later. This will be riding back here at a certain height, and it's kind of like boxes in that piece, that gantry piece that goes across. So. This power wrench here, or battery operated ratchet wrench, on some of these it's good just so you can get them close and snug, but from experience, don't use it to fully tighten, because when you get to the smaller ones, they'll snap easier. So on a lot of these pieces here, I'm just doing it by hand, and I'll use the ratchet. That way I can feel tightness of it, so you don't break it, because I've already broke some, so I'm talking from experience. It calls on section 2.1.1.3. It wants you to go ahead and get these screws in with the rolling T-nuts, but in the package you're going to get a set of instructions that call for, on this step here, they send another bag, which is right here, that actually take the place of the screws that are in the instructions. And this set of instructions here that they send in the package gives you the details on to skip that step and use these screws. Okay, so for whatever reason, the only thing I can think is these are shorter. Now this I will put Loctite on, and we'll go ahead and get them put in there, and I'm gonna just do half. Get them in here, and then the flat part goes toward the riser plate. Talking about, all these need to be oriented down, long side down. So if I was to put this in, let's see, they'll stick out on the bottom here. Hopefully the camera's zoomed in enough. So what you want to do is when you get to this point, you need to turn these up. And it might be a little tedious to hold them in place, but it's got to be done. And there you go. And now they're flush. Okay? So, and you just let it go all the way down till it hits this plate. And I just, and that's that. And all you do is just repeat the same process on the other side. I'm going to get that done and we'll come back and go to the next step. Now that we've installed the riser extrusion, now we're going to install these joining plates on the back side. And to install these, you're going to see that it's got a set of 6 holes and 8 holes. We're going to be using the 6 holes in this step. Okay. Again, we're going to use rolling T-nuts. These are 20 millimeter screws, and it takes a 6 millimeter Allen wrench to tighten them. We will be using Loctite on this, and I'll demonstrate this, but this square here, we're going to need 6 5/16 of an inch from the top plate of the riser column to the top here. So we'll just use this as a reference. So we're going to go ahead and get set up, and we'll go ahead and install this. What you could go ahead and do on this, since this is going to get just slidden up, we can go ahead and put the screws on here while you're sitting on the bench. These will all be oriented down. Just make sure you, well, here it doesn't really matter because they won't stick past the bottom of the plate, so it's not as crucial as here. So all you're going to do is get this, you're going to come in here and get them oriented. And just slide this up. And you don't have to be very precise. They call just to kind of tighten these up. When you lay the horizontal gantry going across here, you'll probably have to adjust these to get these holes to line up right in the groove of the extrusion. But 6 5/16 is probably going to be right about where it needs to be. So that looks about right. So we'll just go ahead and kind of, we'll get 1 or 2 snugged up and wait till we get to that section. So I'm just going to snug a couple of them up just so that it doesn't move. And that's sufficient enough right there. We'll leave that alone. We're going to go and do the other side, and we'll come back and go on to the next step. And now we're going to go on to the gantry extrusion. And I have this sitting on the table as if I was looking at it from the front. So this would be on my left side of my gantry, and that's the right side. Okay, so going through the directions, right now we're going to be working on this side. So we need to be on the back side of it because this is where that red plate's going to come up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just set this down like this. It takes a 8 mil rolling T-nut. The long side of the T-nut goes in first. So we're going to slide 2 in each slot. Okay? So the long side goes in first. And these have a little spring-loaded, like a bearing that'll hold them in place. So, and on both of them it's long side in, and it stresses that you make sure you put these in the correct way. Reason being is because there's going to be a plate here. So if you have the T-nut turned the other way, it's going to interfere. And then on the bottom side, so this would be the bottom side because it was standing up. Okay, so we're designating this the bottom. You got to slide 2 T-nuts in there. So let's just do this. And the same way. Long side in. And it says just to push them in a little ways. On that column plate that hung over, that's where these 2 will take a bolt or a screw in each one of these. So it's going to get secured here and here. And then it says to repeat the steps on the other side. So it takes a total of 10 T-nuts. So we'll go to the other side over here. We're going to go ahead and do the bottom side first. So long side in. And we'll just go ahead and slide these in a little ways. Long side in, meaning the bigger portion between the screw hole goes in first. And like I said, they have a little spring-loaded bearing there, and that holds it in place. Okay, then we're just going to go ahead and lay this down, and we're going to put these in. It's the same thing as that side. Long side in. Long side in. Long side in. Okay, so that's that. Like I said, this is your left side, and it takes a plate. It's called the Gantry End Cap Plate. The plate here, and then a pack of bolts that go with it. And it's enough for both sides. There's 2 of these plates. The plate on the right hand side, you wait to put that in till later on in the steps, because it's going to help you run the cabling for the electronics cable to get to your motors and the stuff on this side. But they want to go ahead and put this plate in, and it shows that these bolts, now this is specific, okay, and you can get this backwards, so you need to pay attention and pay attention to the instructions. These 2 screws here on the bottom, okay, this plate's going to be like so. Okay, there's 2 threaded screw holes here. In the drawing, what it calls for, that these 2 holes are on the outside. So on the outside, when you place this here, these 2 holes need to be furthest away from the extrusion. And it shows that you're going to use 2 screws here on the top 2, and on these 4 here by the hole. These 2 are not going to take anything. I guess there's something else going to attach to here in another step. So whatever you don't use, put back in the bag that they came in, and try to make sure you label that if they're not labeled, like this one wasn't because it was in the package with these plates, I'm going to put Gantry End Plate. Okay, as you can see here, I keep the bags close to the hardware because sometimes you don't use everything in one, and the parts in some of these bags are for other steps, so you don't want to get them mixed up, and then you're trying to find where all these different parts are when you got them all put together. So one critical point is to make sure you keep everything with the bag it came out of. And I'm going to go ahead and I will put Never Sees on this. the next step is going to call for us to set it on the risers on the machine. Okay. And this goes flush. Now the other side you'll be left with the gap because that plate's not on yet. And these threaded holes that are on the outside that you left out, there's 2 holes here, and that's where you'll secure, be another way to lock this down. So now this takes 4 35mm, and the instructions want you to go ahead and get these installed, and the ones on the inside of this plate. And what y'all didn't see, I did it off camera after stressing to y'all that there's 6 bolts here and 8 bolts here. I put it in backwards. I put the one that y'all saw me install on video in correctly, and I got to talking and didn't pay attention, and I had to switch it. I wasn't going to confess, but I am. And that's that. We'll get the screws and put these in, and we'll secure this, and it's going to be the same concept, except you won't be able to put these 2 on that end because the end plate is not installed yet, and that's left open to put the linear rails in, and we'll get that portion done at a later step when we get to it. We're going to go ahead and get the other stuff done off camera, and we'll come back with the next step, which is probably going to be the linear rails, and go from there.